Hey there, everyone. This is Bob Martin, the RCSubGuy with the Nautilus Dry Docks here with
Shop Manager Jason.
Shop Manager Jason. And we are going to be doing a setup video for our long-anticipated and super awesome 250 Series SubDriver. Now, these are the 2.5-inch diameter watertight cylinders that we came up with for smaller boats. So we're going to walk you through setting up the cylinder, but before we do that, we're going to give you an overview and some helpful things that you can do to test all the individual functions before you hook them up. Well, let's get started. What you see before you here is basically what you get with a standard 250 series SubDriver. You got the cylinder itself. We've taken it all apart. Here's the studs and the battery tray. You've got servo cables, you've got power cables, your BEC, which is your battery eliminator circuit that powers your receiver, some clips to keep things tidy, a power distribution block, a fuse, spare seals, some connectors, heat shrink, and your magnetic linkage connectors. Other things that I highly recommend you are going to want to invest in, regardless of whether you've got this cylinder or any other cylinder. This is a battery tester, or sorry, servo tester. This is just a battery clip, puts out 6 volts to the unit. You plug a servo in, and it allows you to cycle the servo, center the servo, do all sorts of things like that. These are cheap. If you go on Amazon, they're like $6. This one looks ancient. I don't even know where I got this one from. You will use it all the time. I guarantee it. The other thing that you're going to want is a source of main power. Now, you can use your battery. In this case, we're going to be using a 1500 milliamp hour lithium polymer battery, which is what the battery tray was designed for. All right. What you would need then is a series of battery clips. You're going to clip to negative and positive, and you're going to test like the pumps and the motors. All right. I'm not going to use this simply because it's kind of a pain jamming these leads in the battery. So I'm using a big sealed lead acid battery that we keep here at the shop. Doesn't really matter. In terms of the actual voltages is 12 volts. The lithium polymer battery is 11.1 volts. Don't matter none. So, first thing that you're going to want to do, obviously, is check the inventory that you have here and make sure that you've got everything. Once that's all done, you are going to want to clip, and actually, you know, I'll let Jason do this. Clip all of the zip ties that we've got all of the cables connected to. So you're going to want to open that up so you've got access to all of the wires. And while he does that, what we're going to do now, just to avoid headache for you in the future, I always recommend test each subsystem first. So, got my servo tester. I'm going to check the servos first. I got full range of motion. There is no binding. I'm going to check the other one out here. Full range of motion, no binding. I really like these 250 series SubDrivers because this linkage lines up perfectly with the horns, which means there's very little offset torque that could cause binding there. Now, the other thing that you want to do, if you've got the dual shaft gearbox upgrade, just make sure that this is nice and free spinning. All right, a little bit of force to move it is perfectly fine, but just make sure it's not bound up. Make sure it's rotating nice and freely. So now what we're going to do, I'm going to connect the BEC, which is down on the bottom of the unit, right here in the middle. It has 35A on it, 35 amp capacity. I'm going to hook that up to the servo tester. Jason's going to connect it to power, and what we should theoretically hear is the startup sounds. There we go. Now I'm going to make sure there's no cables touching the motor. And we're just going to give it a little bit of torque here. Going to go nice and slow. So this is just right low. So that's nice low RPMs. Everything is smooth. Everything is quiet. Forward and reverse. All right. Motors are working. Servos are working. Now we're going to move up to the pump bulkhead here. So the major components that you've got here, your air pump, your ballast linkage servo, and the 2IS switch. So this controls the pump and the ballast servo. So the 2IS is now plugged into the servo tester. We're going to hook power up to the 2IS, and that's where the main air pump gets its juice from. So to dive, the vent will retract into the ballast tank. You should not hear the pump kick on, and if you look inside, there should be a little hole in that ballast linkage on the inside. It should be exposed when it pulls down. That's where all the air goes out. I'm going to bring it back to neutral. All right, nice and smooth, no binding. Now we're going to go the other way, and what should happen in theory, the pump should kick on. Now the pump kicks on at about 60% throw. If you have the optional gas backup, on the inside there is a little plunger, a tire valve. If you go all the way, that linkage horn on the inside should depress the valve, and it does. So that bulkhead has been checked, and of course the last one we've got is on the other side. We've got 2 more servos. You may not use them. Typically, these would be for bow planes. And the other one could be for example, torpedo launchers or torpedo doors or periscopes or anything you want them to control. So now everything has been checked. Everything is functional. So we know if we go into a troubleshooting scenario later on, the individual components are all functioning properly, at least at this time. Okay, the next step that we are going to be doing is feeding servo cables and power cables into this conduit that will bring, obviously, signal and power from one compartment to the other compartment. Now this probably the trickiest part of this whole scenario because it's a fairly smallish tube and fairly largish connectors. So the trick to this is to make sure that you don't stack all of these up together because it makes a big, fat, nasty block. So you are going to want to stagger these back like a train, kind of like this, so that they're as skinny as possible. And then once you've got all that, we can use our power cable and start feeding it through. All right, at this point, it's very important to make sure that you have all of the male ends of the servo cables because the receiver is going in the battery compartment, away from the motors and away from the pumps and any sort of electrical interference. So you're going to go from the pump end with the male side, not the big blocky one with the hole in it, but the male side. So what we're going to do here, we're going to make our lives easy. We're going to tape a 3/32 rod to these, and we're going to put just one layer of tape around, and this is just going to hold everything together nice and aligned and tight. And in theory, we can use this rod to push all the cables through. We did it! So yeah, that was probably the hardest part of the whole operation. You can see where it kind of rubbed there. If you're having problems getting that through the cable, you can always pop the ends off. All you do for those is pull these little plastic clips up and away from the metal, and then the black plastic will pop right off, and then you'll just have the cables. We probably should have done that. We were lazy. Power and 4 leads. So what we want to do at this point, before we go any further, we're going to label all of these cables. So from the back, we've got channel 1 and channel, typically what I would put on is channel 7 or 6, depending if you've got a high frequency or low frequency radio. Rudder is always 1. So I'm going to put a little 1 dot on this servo. Eventually, oh, that's going to be nice and bright. Now we just got to figure out which one that is. It's this one right here. 1 and 1. And I'm going to put 6 on here. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's our stern dive planes. We need throttle, which is typically 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And the last one is our pump, which is typically on 5, which is this one here. 1, 2, 3. Come on. 4, 5. Now we'll always know which cable goes into which channel, but also which one connects on the back. So we can actually even go about connecting these. 3 is throttle. And I'm not sure, it doesn't matter in this particular case which is which, because I don't know how your boat's set up, but we'll just connect it to a random. We'll say that this is rudder, and there we go. And then we need to, yep, there we go. Into 5, ballast into 5. The actual channel assignment doesn't matter. Just make sure you keep note of what you've got connected to which with your receiver. In the back, there are 2 things that require power. There is your 2IS, which is the pump power, and then there is the ESC. Both of these need power, and they need to be connected together. And for that, we've got this handy dandy connector deal that should be coming with your kit. This is a 2 in, 4 out. It doesn't matter. All the positives are connected, all the negatives are connected. So you can put power in and out whichever way you want to go. This is what they look like. So we're going to end up with the power in on this side. Maybe you can strip that for me. And then on the other side, we've got our ESC. Give them a good tug, make sure that they're plugged in properly. Twist these up, make sure that they're going to crunch nice in there. All right. In theory, everything's got signal. Everything's got power, and there's no more connections to be made up here. Now we're going to tidy things up later. We just want to make sure that they work first. So don't take the time yet to tidy up your cables. You don't need to do it yet. Let's make sure everything works first. In the front, we need to have a few things with power. Well, actually only one thing with power. Our BEC, which is going to give power to our receiver. We've got a little arrow here, so power in, power out. This will be like, 7.4 volts or 11.1 volts or 12 volts. Doesn't matter what goes in, it'll always be 5 volts out. All right? So we're not going to worry about the outside, but we're going to snip the inside. So from a cable length perspective, you probably want to have about 3 inches of extra play in here, because this will be mounted in your cylinder. It needs to have access once your cylinder is here and in place. So that means that all of this is potentially extra. All right, so this is the same sort of thing. We're going to cut it off about 4 inches long and strip. Oh, I almost did it. Look at that. Did it. The beauty of silicone wire. Okay, let's check out the power situation here. So we got a battery, and we need to get power to everything. So we have a XT30 60 connector here, and the power that goes to the front is connected to it, as is the power to the BEC. So when we connect this, everything basically gets energized. Now, if you were going to be installing, as I'm going to assume and hope that this individual is going to be doing, installing one of our heavy-duty remote on-off switches, it would go in the middle of this. It would get wired in between this. If there is no remote switch being used, you would put that fuse right here in the positive line that runs before the BEC and before that power cable to the back. So either way, you need to make sure that your cylinder is fused. This is a 15 amp fuse, and the heavy duty switch has a 15 amp fuse in it as well, a built-in 15 amp fuse. But regardless, you need to put a fuse in, whether it's in between here with the remote switch or here with the separate auto fuse. All right. Now that that's done, the cylinder is basically set up and ready to go. All of these leads are going to be connected to the receiver. We're going to put our battery in the battery tray. All of these would get connected to the receiver too, depending on what you got going on. All right. So, in theory, with the radio on, if we plug this in, everything should start working. Oops. Okay. Well, that was positive. Okay, let's take a look at the front here. I'll see if I can figure out which channel does what here. So one should be 2. There we go. That's our forward diplanes. And then the other one is plugged into what channel? 5. Oh, there you go. Proportional control. That one's working too. Now we've got our stern planes, apparently. Or is on that channel, which sounds fun. Throttle. That works. Rudder. It works. Oh, but we got no pump. So our pump had no power. It wasn't turning on. I'll bet that these were getting kinked without the wire engaging the contacts. So let's just strip these back a little bit. And we'll try it again. There we go. It works. So hey, there's a little troubleshooting for you. If the pump's not getting power, it's either the connection from the 2IS to the pump or the main power to the 2IS. And it just happened to be main power to the 2IS. Now we're going to tidy everything up, get it all looking nice, and see what it looks like when everything is put together. And what we've got now is the finished cylinder, ready for the receiver, the remote switch, you know, your pitch controller, your BLM failsafe unit. All of that can go right here, and you got this handy dandy little tray with lots of flat areas to mount everything in. I think it actually works really, really good. So just to take a look there, the battery goes, you know, in the bottom area there. You got lots of room for cables on the side and all of those components I talked about, and then lots of room on the inside here as well. So cylinder's done, ready to go. Well, there you go, guys. Setup of the new 250 series SubDriver. If you're looking for information on that SubDriver, I'll put the link to the product in the description so you can take a look at it. It's available with varying ballast tank lengths. And if you need to as well, if you've got a special project or a smallish project, both the front and rear sections can be cut back a little bit so they're not quite as long. It's a super cool product. We're really excited about it. Thanks for joining us for this setup. If you have questions or comments, you can put a comment down below here or reach out to me directly, bob@nautilusdrydocks.com, which will absolutely be faster, by the way. But I guess with that, I'm Bob Martin, the RCSubGuy, and
Jason.
We'll let you go. Thanks for joining us, and hey, we'll catch you next time.